Hey, one more thing before you go. James Heppner's business was strong, his wealth was plentiful, and his life seemed all he had wished it to be. Performing life versus living life, though, nearly cost him his business, his investments, his children, and his marriage. The never ending, hyper vigilant striving to achieve the next level of success suddenly awakened him to the deep emptiness of his current lived experience. James flip flopped between being restless and bored and anxious and depressed, which forced him to build a new infrastructure grounded upon authenticity and gratitude. He recognized that losses are simply disguised gifts hidden in plain sight. I agree with him. In this episode, we're going to learn how he came to learn that valuable lesson. What's the best way to discover new perspective? And how to see your opportunities in a new way to embrace both a win and a loss for equal gain. I'm your host, Michael Herst, and this is One More Thing Before You Go. Hey, welcome back. My guest in this episode is James Heppner. He likes to think of himself as an artist of experience. His passion is to create transformational experiences for himself and others as a way to fully explore what it means to be truly live. Fully alive. James is a results coach and a founder of Weekly Wins and Losses podcast and a weekly global community call. He helps people in their journey to embrace all of life, both wins and losses equally. He helps you firmly establish the mental and physical courage needed to do difficult things while guiding you to activate your ability to leverage the good news that lies at the heart of both a win and a loss. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. I'm honored to be here.
Listen, after kind of looking into your podcast and what you do, I'm very honored to have you join me on this conversation. I think that the journey that you've been on and what your life experience has presented itself is an outstanding opportunity for others to kind of learn, be motivated, be moved forward, and inspire them to be better themselves, better ourselves.
Oh gosh, Michael, that's you just put this, you raise the standard and you raise the bar high. Let me just say it like this. I think we might have some fun here because I'm going to have to just reflect back on how I know a bit about you. And of course, your listeners will know this about you, but you're an ex-cop and you're not the average ex-cop. And I'm not saying that cops aren't, the wide lens of the cop is a good cop. But let's just say it this way, right? You have chosen to let life in, and that's a beautiful, beautiful story. A cop that just didn't just like fast cars and shooting people up, and but you like fast cars, but you like to
But
sit on a park bench,
yeah,
park the car, and then
fast
you
cars
meet
was
the
the
local.
fast cars is the benefit.
There you go. So perhaps the fast, so that when you could park the car, you could slow it down and be with the locals. And so, hey, thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I think we're gonna have fun here today.
Absolutely, I agree 100%.
Mhm.
I like to start at the beginning, so let's start there. Where'd you grow up?
That's wonderful. Grew up in a small community in southern Manitoba. So, for those that are tapping in to this talk from the United States, Manitoba is a province of Canada that's directly above North Dakota. So, a small little farming community in southern Manitoba. So, we're tucked right up against the U.S. border.
That's it's interesting because the I've talked to other people from Canada, all over from what is it, British Columbia, and from Ontario, and from Toronto. So I'm
Mhm.
familiar with those areas. I know you said it's just like right above North Dakota. So do you,
That's right. And that's where I was raised. But now I live in British Columbia. So, I live on the west coast, Vancouver, currently.
from there, so you get the same weather and everything like. I know I've never lived in North Dakota, but I grew up in Colorado, and I grew up in the
Wow.
mountains of Colorado. So I'm used to 30-inch snows in May,
Yeah.
in June. You know, did you experience that as you grew up?
Yeah, you know what? I there's actually back in I was born 1976, and so it makes me 46 now, and I got some white hairs coming in, and I'm good with that. My wife, apparently, we've been together for 27 years. She kind of likes the white hair, so I'm going to let it grow out now. So I was trying to hide it by cutting it. She just told me the other day that she actually prefers a little white hair, and so she's never been adverse to like men getting older. So I'm thinking, well, perhaps that's what I'll do now. But when I lived in Manitoba, to your point, we had a snowstorm back. What was it? My birthday is April 14th, and I think we had I think we had a snowstorm in middle of May, which is untypical. But I'll tell you something. The weather is pretty extreme over there. You go from, minus so freezing, so water freezing is zero. We go to minus 40 in the dead of winter,
Wow.
and then in the middle of summer we go plus 35. So you go from highs to lows, and then you get the mosquitoes in the summer, and you get winds, and so it's an interesting climate. So we don't live in igloos. We didn't live in igloos there, but I kid you not, it got pretty intense sometimes. So
I would think so. Holy smokes. Now that's
yeah,
centigrade or Fahrenheit?
you know what? And sorry, I need to
That's all
get
right.
this right. I'm not an expert in school. I never really loved school, but when I say water freezes at zero, so I wish I could. But if you just consider placing a cup outside at zero, the water will freeze. Well, we're at minus 40 degrees. So if you'd be outside in bare skin for less than a minute, your skin would freeze typically. So you have
Yeah,
to be
that's
careful.
kind of that's not definitely
No,
definitely cold, but not cool. In a different way, not
that's
cool.
right. That's right. Good point.
What was your family like?
Oh yeah. What was my family like? And so are you asking what are they like or what were they like?
Well, they what were they like, and what are they like?
Yeah, yeah. So I was raised in a home. My parents have been together forever. They last or 2 years ago, I went down to their 50th wedding anniversary, and they had five children. I was the middle, four daughters and one boy, and so my family was, an interesting, like I think many families are. There's always something going on, and in our family, let's just say it like this: my my parents were addicted to religion, and a lot of it was organized religion, and they had a strong faith. My dad was a pastor of this mega church, and yeah, let's say that there was a lot of time in our family to serve people, and sometimes the service of others left us children wondering where and how we fit in. So they were very generous people. And my dad would sit at the bedside of my mom included, at many a or at many a person from the church or people they knew who was passing away, and they would support and always be there in the roughest of times. So my family always modeled forward to me in my life, and I to this day still hold that when people have rough time, you got to be present to observe that. And oftentimes, pressure will reveal what we can become present to. Pressure brings us to presence. And sometimes, when I remember my dad would and my mom would receive perhaps pressure and it would seem like people were slamming them or whatever, they would choose empathy. And I think they would just choose to see what was behind most of this. And they would see that the people are probably just pressured. And so that would make my parents more present, and that would have them drop into just listening to what's really there. And so that's a bit about my parents, and my parents are still part of an organized religious community. I'm not part of an organized religious community anymore. I am a believer, but I am now an inclusive one. I don't find transcendence through exclusion. I find transcendence through inclusion. So, um,
We have that in
uh, you
common.
know, right? Yeah, there you go. And so my sisters, what was interesting is my sisters, I had two older ones, and the oldest one drew me crazy. Like she was just about right and wrong. The sister that was right next to her, Cheryl, she was all about fun. And so I loved her. And then my younger two sisters, well, they were just kind of bopping along. However, the one right next to me in age, she was a bit like me, wanting to test the edges, experience what's there. And so I think she was the handful for my parents, to be honest. And my youngest, she was just listening to all of what we were chattering about, basically. And so I think it was a typical family. But my family in general, loving, caring. If I'd summarize, loving,
Hmm.
caring family. a family that really wanted to be about good. But to this day, I still wonder about not questioning if they're doing good, but are you enjoying doing the good you're doing?
Right.
And so there wasn't a lot of laughter in the home. It's unfortunate, but there wasn't. And to be honest, I frankly, when I was a child, and I'll just share a quick little story. I remember my dad was a farmer, and we go into this implement dealership for spare parts for the combine, the tractor, whatever it was. And I remember a gentleman came in, stepped up to the counter, and he was a well-known, a wealthy, large farmer. We weren't that wealthy. We weren't a large organization. And this gentleman was just sharing jokes with the guy at the John Deere dealership. And they were just laughing and having a great time. And I remember thinking, this looks like fun. But I was just a little tyke, and I'm sitting there looking at my dad, and I'm going, how are you observing all of this? And my dad felt very uncomfortable. And I don't think the joke was off point or is affecting his views as much as he just didn't know how to respond. And so my dad found a way of exiting the building, basically. He got his parts and left. And so I onboarded when I was a child. I onboarded much of that. And so when I was I wanted to be around people that were a good time. But when I was around them and they really started laughing, I remember getting really nervous because I could laugh for about 2 seconds and then I'd want to like shift into serious. so so it's really kind of fascinating. And so what happened when I met the woman that I'm with and have been, like I say, for 27 years, she's a laugher. She likes to laugh at everything. Like when we were dating, I'll never forget, we were like play wrestling in the basement and her knee comes up and it cracks me in the forehead right above my eye and it slices open the skin, breaks it free, and blood comes out. And she starts laughing, and I'm thinking, what manner of silly is this? I'm thinking, well, she's just having a good time. And she looks at me finally, and she goes, "Hey, don't worry about it. Let's go upstairs. Let's get you cleaned up." Because the mother was upstairs and the dad was upstairs, and so we walk up, and her mom looks at me, and she does about 10 times the laughter of my wife Meg. And I'm thinking, is this a crazy house? But to make a long story short, let's just I'm just going to fully reveal. It took me about 5 years after we were married, and we dated 4 years, but 5 years after we married, until I finally gave way and became more comfortable laughing. And now laughter, I mean, it's at the center of my life. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting story. Crack your head open and laugh at me. Thank you. And then you go up to mom and she's laughing. It's like, what have I walked myself into here? That's
right? Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Did you go to university?
I didn't go to university.
What did you want to be when you
I
grew up?
tried. Yeah, I tried for two. I said I was going to try university for 2 weeks, but I lasted 2 days. I was, and I think many people can relate. I think we have intention. I remember when I was in grade 8, they asked, "What do you want to be when you're older?" Well, my dad was a farmer and a pastor. Well, I was a stutterer, so I couldn't really speak very clearly. So I'm thinking, well, that's out of the cards. So I'm thinking, well, my dad's a farmer and I don't mind helping him. And I feel good driving a tractor and being in the
Right.
dirt and, being part of the ecosystem. Right. And so wanting to say farmer, but realizing everybody had these professions that they were audibly throwing out, doctors, all these people. And I remember just thinking, what do I want to be? And I just wrote down fireman. Not like I wanted to be a fireman, but I like the color red. I still do, as you can see. Right. And so,
Fireman. See, we
yeah,
say
yeah.
we the cop to business. Say it's fireman. I mean, real low. Fireman. I'm a cop. I'm a police officer. He's a fireman.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. So maybe you and I have something in common. So my wife, her earth element is water. So I wear blue because I love blue, but I love the fire. So I do both together. And when I think about a cop, the cop is like red and blue lights flashing. So I don't know if we got this going
It
on here,
works.
right? But it works. It works.
I will preface. I will say this out loud. I have my. I have a family. It's a blue and red family. I still have colleagues and relationships with people that I work with and people here in my present community because we moved from Colorado to Arizona, and that are cops and firemen because and
Mm,
firefighters, I should say, not just firemen.
mm, mm,
Because we're one big family. We were all working the front line. We were all in the middle of it, and we all had each other's backs.
mm,
So I joke, But in the firefighters, they'll joke too that we're better than cops, and cops will joke we're better than firefighters. But in reality, we are all one big
Uh,
family.
well, and it's probably just a healthy little poke. It's interesting. I had a gentleman on a short while ago on my show, and he is a F-15 fighter pilot. He's flown combat operations
Oh, very cool.
in different parts of the world. And what's fascinating about him is he's a trainer now, a fighter. He trains fighter pilots to do a great job, right? And to do your reads properly. And,
Well,
when you've got these unfriendlies around you, you've got to be doing reads plus the amount of unfriendlies. And so just the way he goes. But what was really fascinating, he talked about the movie Top Gun. And I said, "Did you see it?" And he laughs. He says, "Are you asking a question?" And I said, "Well, okay, you saw it. How was it?" And he said, "Well, let's say it like this. We filled, and how I think it was two or three theaters." And he goes, "And the other ones," and I say, "Which other ones?" He goes, "Well, see, we're not the ones that land on aircraft carriers. That's
right.
them. Like, who cares?" He was
Who
so kind
cares?
of to your point of, he goes, "You know what? We're the planes that land on like the earth. Like we're." So he was kind of, so I totally get it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's funny. That's funny. That's like I started my career. I was joined the Navy in the beginning, and Navy. If you're in the Army, I grew up in an Army town. I grew up in Colorado
Mhm.
Springs. It had Fort Carson, which is a huge military base. We also had Air Force Academy, and
Mhm.
NORAD, and the Aerospace Command. So most of that's Air Force and Army. So Navy, to them, Navy's like you're a what? You know, but obviously you go to California or you go to the East Coast, you go to Connecticut, then Navy superior. And if you're Army or Air Force, it's like, you know, kind of a thing. So yeah, my brother retired off of. Don't ask me why he did this. He joined the Navy, but he went into submarines. So he
No.
spent a career in submarines, which probably explains a lot about him today. But we'll leave that for another conversation. So yeah, that's funny. So, what did you end up in life when you started? You didn't go to university. You did not become a firefighter. Where'd you go from there?
I think well, because I'll just preface your question with, I'll just enter into a version of an answer the best I can here, and the best I can muster forward here. So the woman that I married, she was an adventurer, and an adventurer, though not one that preferred business. Her mother owned a few businesses, and her mother was never around. So her and I had similar stories. My dad was really
Mm,
never around, and so, but anyway, her mother, wherever her mother went, she would strike up conversation about business. And so, jokingly, the other day, I had a client, and the client he's going through specific things, and he's wondering how to properly approach the opposite sex and do it properly. And he's a younger gentleman. I don't coach a lot of younger gentlemen, but
right.
anyway, so I'm chatting with him, and so I finished the call, and we're having dinner last night. And May goes, "How was your day?" And of course I'm a professional. I don't reveal who I'm talking with or the subject matter, as much as to say though that, hey, listen, this gentleman is just looking at how to properly, authentically connect with someone in a way that would be non-intrusive, but would nicely express interest, but interest in a playful, appropriate way. And so so I was just going through a few renditions. It wasn't what I had said to this
Right.
person, but I was going through something playful. And then my oldest son, Rowan, starts laughing, and he says, "Oh my goodness, like, isn't it supposed to be simple? Don't you just like walk up to someone and just say, hey?" And then Meg says, this is actually how dad asked me out. Dad called me up and said, "Hey, listen, I'm wondering if you'd like to go to the movies." you know? And so what's interesting is I take her to the movie. And so to answer your question, I take her to the movie, and we walk up. And back in the day, it's you walk into the theater, and of course there's a reel that's spinning, and the spinning reel reveals the movie on the screen. So we're going to this older theater at the time, and they still had that spinning reel, and we stop, of course, at the concession stands. So I'm ordering popcorn and different things, and I'm a ripe old, what is it, a 21-year-old guy, and she's all of 17. And I'm standing there, and the owner of the establishment, it just so happens that he's inside the concession area. And I've been looking at approaching him, but I haven't been able to find him at his business or find him wherever he says he's going to be. And I'm recruiting. And at the time, I had a small little newspaper, and it's like a small coffee shop top paper. And so I was looking to see if he'd want to be in as an advertisement in the newspaper. And so I said to Meg, "Hey, honey, if you like to have it, because I could see she was kind of uncomfortable. I was picking this up, and I said, if you'd like to have a seat, and I said, if you like, I can walk you to your seat or our seat, but I'll be right there." And she goes, "Okay." She goes, "No, I'll just go find my own." So she walks to her seat, and I talk to this guy, and I get my popcorn and my drink, and needless to say, I sit down beside her, and she's not too talkative. Our first date. I'm like, this isn't so interesting. What's happening here? Anyway, we leave the theater, and she says, "Hey, listen, if you want to do business, go ahead, but just let me know because I might not be that interested."
Well, but they're
And so,
right to the point.
right to the point. And so we talked about, we got right real. Like, she's really real. I'm pretty real. So we chatted about it. I say, "Listen, business is at the heart of who I am." And I said, "We're gonna have to find a way of making this work, but I hear where you're coming from. I'm gonna make sure this doesn't destroy our life." And so what did I do? Right. And so I chose business, but I basically said, "I will be present with you." She's someone that loves to be around people. She would, you would find her just a pleasure to be with. Like, she's a sensitive, kind, but not overtly sensitive,
Right.
very playful little thing. Like, she's a firecracker, right? So I ended up, we got married back in 2000. I ended up starting a company where we built custom, ready to move homes, and we shipped them to the United States and different provinces. I'd never built a product in my life. On the farm, I developed allergies, so I couldn't be a farmer. And so I decided this is what I'm going to do. And really, the reason that I chose it is because the challenge was large enough for me to get
Right.
excited about. If it's not risky enough, I'm not willing to do it. And so we ended up doing that. The bank account got fat pretty quick. It wasn't because I was so smart. Is basically because my honesty. If I'd be honest, if I didn't know something, I told people, "I don't know this. Let me get back to you on it." And so we went from nothing and an unknown in a small community, at least in the business arena. In the spiritual space, our family is very, like, everybody knew us.
Right.
But in the business community, nobody knew of us. And so all of a sudden, I had all these houses that were pre-built, and it just ended up being, I mean, there's grace, there's luck, there's a whole bunch of all of that going on. Uh, all that I can say is to this day, I mean, though I have shifted my ambitions, I'm not quite as, if the door's closed, I'll knock it down. I used to do that. I'm like, doors knocked down or doors there, I'll just kick it down. I'm not like that anymore. I learned a few lessons, let's say it like this. And I learned that, you can't step on people. And
Yeah.
so the one thing that I still am about is I like going to the edge, but now I talk about further faster without hurting anyone, including myself. And I clearly hurt a bunch of people not being aware of it before. And the person who I hurt the most was myself, to be honest.
No, I think
I spent 2.5 years where I checked out. No.
we all have lessons to learn like that. I think we all sometimes it takes us a little bit to reflect and look back on and decide whether or not that was a positive action or a negative action and what the consequences of those actions are. We all are human beings, and sometimes we have to be made aware
Mm,
of those
yeah.
mistakes. I like you. I like how you put it. My life worked, and then it didn't.
Hmm.
So, how did you evolve from that? I know that you have you had a strong business going. Do you have anything that was missing within that arena? What put you on the path where
Hmm.
you're at now?
Hmm.
That's a lot of questions, isn't it?
Oh, I love that. It's so good. Yeah, this is. By the way, I always appreciate being interviewed by people who've done life a little longer than me because it seems like, yeah, there's just always this depth and this tender curiosity and just desire to be playfully. Yeah, I just absolutely love it. So when I have people like you that I get to talk with, it's fantastic. So thank you. I just really love
You're
that.
welcome. I appreciate saying that I've lived longer than me instead of saying, "Well, you're a really old guy."
Yeah,
so
no,
so I
that's right.
appreciate
Yeah,
that too.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly right. Life worked until it didn't. I think kind of you asked earlier about the home I was raised in. My dad had a demand of us. on life, and so did my mom, and that's to live a good, God-fearing life. Like that was their idea of a good time. Basically, fear, don't do the wrong thing, sort the good from the bad, use that as your ideal. And so those are the demands that were put on us. However, and listeners, you can probably attest to this. We, as individuals, we all have individual desires. We have unique desires, and your desire will be different than mine. And so we are both demands and we are desires. When we're raised as children, we observe them from our parents. And the influencing aspect of demand and desire is desire. Though our parents say, please do the right thing, we as children, we actually adhere to and follow the parents' desire more than the demands. That's just how it works. It always works like that. So when I married Meg and we started our first business, one of the things that I desired was a nice fat bank account. Where'd that come from? Well, I'll never forget. There I am driving in the backseat of my parents' car with my four sisters, probably no seatbelts at the time. You know how it is. You're all just in there like sardines. And it's a Sunday afternoon. My parents' way of living was Sunday you didn't work. And Sunday what you do is you go to town, you get an ice cream cone, and maybe you drive around the neighborhood, and then if you spot somebody in a combine, heaven forbid they're harvesting on a Sunday. You know, my dad would say something like, "Oh," and these people, for example, the one gentleman that had said the joke at the John Deere dealership, the one that was a wealthy farmer, he was the one combining. So my dad would drive by and he'd say, "Well, it sure looks nice to have a combine like that, but it's too bad you got to work on Sunday now if you do that." So his demand was, don't do the wrong thing, work when you're supposed to work, keep the Sabbath holy. But the desire was money. So I was raised with a desire of money. And so life worked until it didn't. It worked when my bank account got really fat. And I basically proved to myself, and I basically proved to my dad, that's kind of why we do these things. I proved to myself, thinking it was just for me, but it was probably more so to prove to him that I could have the thing that he's always wanted. And I remember I bought him, like, he worked with me for a while, and I purchased him a 1949 restored Ford pickup truck. It's fully restored, it's beautiful. I delivered it to him on Father's Day, had it on the back of a trailer, and I delivered it over. And it was really a fascinating play. And I felt like life's working. Bank account's great. We got the vacations, got the new house, got the toys, got the things, and it was all paid for in cash. And then all of a sudden it didn't work anymore. We had one child, and then we had the second. And on the second, that's when it didn't work anymore. And my wife, and I guess in our home, we had more of a traditional relationship. I would be the worker, and she would be the one that was working at home. I would work outside the home, and she'd work inside the home. So I've seen her as equal value as me. Like, she has her throne, I have my throne. I don't subjugate her to, like, you do the housework, and because that's who you are. You're just a housework human. That's not how I see it. We just ordered it that way. She felt comfortable staying home with the kids. I felt comfortable going to work. So that's what I did. And I'll never forget, my days churned into working days, and then working day and night, and then not having any break on the weekend. And I remember observing that she would be raising the kids, and she would be building these beautiful relationships with them and talking with them. And there I was, thinking that I was bringing value. And of course, my value was measured on the external. And then I thought, well, yeah, she's doing the internal work, which is beautiful, but it sucks that I can't also just be. Like, it seems like she gets to be with them while she's working with them. And so the story of my life, basically, it all came ahead when, and I had suffered from depression for years and years and years when I was in school. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I had this really vicious stutter, and I I I always doubted myself, and I had depression through because of a lot of these things. And one day I come home from work and I see her sitting on the porch with the kids, and she's just laughing like she is and having a good time. And of course, this has been adding up. This not resentment of her life, but kind of being like, how is it you get to both be and do, and here I am just bringing externals. I'm bringing home, like, sacks of potatoes and you're creating amazing things from it. I love it. But how is it that you get to enjoy all of this? And of course, what happens is, and this has been my style. Now, I still to this day do this. Before I hurt people out there, I'm going to hurt myself. And I don't know if I was shown this when I was a child, or maybe I was the only boy, and so I just projected things into myself. But I just said to her, I walked up to her, I said, it's back. She goes, what's back? I said, depression's back. And so let's say it like this. This time it reared its head, and this happened in 2008, by the way. Harrison, our youngest, was about a year and a half at the time. And we had just tested him. He has high functioning autism, so he was diagnosed with that. And I remember thinking and I received an audit from the government, so a whole bunch of things happened at the same time. The audit arrived. Harrison was diagnosed with high functioning autism. 2008, so the market, of course, we're in the home building industry and land development, took a massive hit. I'm beginning to wonder, what is my value? And of course, I'm not able to deliver externally like I did before. So here I am thinking, who am I? Am I a fallacy? And I chose very selfishly, and I think, like you've shared earlier, you too have had your experience with depression, right? You once were in a wheelchair, and life kind of got you, the victim mentality. And I'll tell you one thing for me. So speaking of one thing, and before I could go anywhere too quick, I went straight to the bedroom and I laid my ass down, and I thought, I'm going to just sleep this through. And how often isn't it where sleep could do this? It can reset us. It's beautiful. We wake up, a new day. But when I woke up from my sleep, it was like 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It was dinner time. I didn't really want to go out and see the family. So I thought, why don't I just lay here some more? And what started as just a subtle little idea of, let's just be with my own pain. Let's feel the misery, which there's nothing wrong with experiencing the feels. Like, please don't hear me say this. Like, we must feel, because if you don't feel, we're dead. So laughing and crying, both are amazing. I love to do both. If I don't have a laugh, a good one, and a good cry in one day, I don't feel like I've really lived. So both bring me deep joy. I don't have to convert the cry into like I'm utopic. But anyway, back to that narrative. What went from an evening of sleeping turned into 2.5 years of sleeping 18 and a half hours a day.
Wow.
Sedating myself with melatonin, getting into the car and going through like a drive-through and getting gravel tablets.
I don't know what gravel
Saying,
tablets are.
yeah, gravel just to help with nausea, and often they help you. They put you more into a sleepy state. And so for 2.5 years, 18 and a half hours a day sleeping. I'd be in the bedroom for that amount of time. And then the times that I said I'm going to go to the office, I would get in the car and I'd try to encourage myself and convince myself, James, you've thought it through long enough. This must mean something. You should be further ahead in your thinking. So I try to create thinkingness away from the problem, basically. And that never really works that well. So I would get in the car. I'd say to the honey, hey, honey, I'm going to go to work. And I'd feel all disheveled. I look white as a sheet. She said, are you sure you're okay? I go to work, say I go to work, but I take the car and I'd find this back road someplace and park it and pull out a blanket from the trunk. And I'd sleep in the back seat, popping more melatonins.
Wow. That's a journey.
So it worked until it no longer did. And I remember I didn't want to leave the existence of this earth. Like, I didn't want to take care of myself. I didn't want to end my life. But I'll tell you something, I didn't want to be here. So the only way that I could think of doing it is just numbing out.
I think a lot of us do that. I mean, it's a situation where we innately, when we get to a certain point in our lives, that something changes dramatically. Like you said earlier, I went through it too, because I was a sergeant. I was ready to take the lieutenant's test and move on up the line. I watched people that work with me, under me, and above me continue to move up the line. And that made me more angry and depressed and resentful, because I watched these guys that I trained are now lieutenants and captains and commanders and, assistant chiefs and chiefs. And it created an environment, similar to yours, where I just kind of sat around watching TV, and I didn't really want to do much, and I was angry and I was
Mm,
resentful, and I wouldn't even watch cop shows, because it kind of, now that's pretty bad. Cop won't watch cop shows, um, because it just reminded me of what I lost, and then I was angry at the situation and angry at where it had
mm,
come from, and why me? Why did this happen to me? I went through all of that. I did not go through what you had done with that for a couple of years, where you kind of slept, basically. Hidden yourself away in sleep. How did you pull? How did you recognize that enough to pull yourself out of that, to say this? This is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to be doing.
mm, I think I had to finally come to a place of just observing that my constant trying to think my way away from something, meaning trying to eliminate thoughts, typically doesn't work. You got to find a way to utilize them. And so I remember distinctly there was this moment when I thought, okay, gee, I've done this for 2 years now, and I haven't seen my family. I haven't gone to family gatherings. I haven't seen my friends. Like I was a recluse. Like I had squirreled myself. People were contacting my wife and saying, "Can we come see him?" And she'd say he prefers not. And people would come into the foyer and drop off food or whatever, and I wouldn't come out. And so after about 2 years of this, like that's 700 and whatever it is, 20 some odd days. I think we as humans, we all have a design and an appetite for variety. If things stay consistent too long, we desire for something to be different. Or even if you think about a marriage relationship, you go through different seasons. I'm not saying you have to get on the bus and go find another partner, but you go through different seasons, and all of a sudden you're like, now marriage will be like this for us. And so you go through these different iterations. There's different seasons. We desire to go through like the winter, the spring, the summer, the fall. Just like nature, this is what we humans do, right? And so um, I just remember that I began to finally become okay with seeing that I had become addicted to success. And the addiction, by me saying that I need to get rid of it. So there's the elimination of trying to get rid of that made it worse. So 2 years was just going in circle basically. Then I finally realized that we're actually all addicted to something, and we get to choose what we want to be addicted to, and what we make choice of is going to give us and others a great experience, and or it can give us the opposite. It can be a humbling, it can be a devastation experience. And so I remember thinking to myself, and what kept me kind of from about year 2 to 2.25 year, what kept me kind of playing with the idea but not going for it, is I felt really guilty. Of course, I mean, you see how you checked out of life. You've made it hard on your wife, and one day she comes in the bedroom, she says, "What's happened to our relationship?" And she was my little angel, and we were like these lovers we'd been. And finding use for what's happening in your life. Why is it the good news that I was once addicted to success? Why is it the good news for anyone that you can clearly see what you're addicted to? Well, if you don't see clearly what you're addicted to, you can never make choice what you might want to shift and become addicted to in a different way. Like currently, I'm addicted to just enjoying life, not in a hyperbole way, but addicted to feeling and empathizing with where people are at in life. So you can see I'm using how I was raised, but I'm now furthering, and I'm saying, listen, the good news is I was addicted to the desires of becoming successful. Well, what would I like to become addicted to that would be a desire that would take me, and if others want, further and faster without hurting people? Because I clearly had chosen addiction that just hurt a bunch of people. I didn't intend to, but it did. And so I think what really got me fully committed, I'll say it like this, I'll never forget. And at the time, I went to a Tony Robbins event. It was a date with destiny, and it was relationship day. And so these events, by the way, they're 6 days long. Relationship day was day 4, I believe. And remember, I typically slept 18 and a half hours. during this time of my life. And so at these events, if you're lucky, you sleep 2, 3 hours a night because it goes from early to late. Like I kid you not, it's a long day. And so I'd done this for 4 days in a row. And so it was relationship day. And of course, relationship is what my wife Meg and I are all about. Like this is we're in a relationship. It's a married relationship. So she gets up out of the bed in the morning. She says, "Okay, honey, today's relationship day. It's going to be a fun day." And I said, "Hey, honey, I'm really tired today." And she says, "Oh, okay. What would you like to do?" And I said, I would prefer if I could just sleep for part of the day, if maybe not a large part of the day." I looked at her and she says, "Yeah, you do whatever you want." She says, "It would just mean a lot to me if you came down, but you do what you want, baby." So I remember she went down and I stayed in the room. I closed the curtains. I took my stash of melatonin, my gravel, and I ingested a whole handful. I thought I'm going to fall asleep pretty quick and crawled under the blanket. It was comfortable for about 5 seconds. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I've been a taker for 2.5 years. She's saying it would mean a lot to me if you would just come down. And I said, I can't do this. I jumped out of bed. I ripped those fucking curtains, pardon the language, but I ripped those fucking curtains open. Put on my pants. I don't know if I combed my hair. I was probably whiter than a sheet times two. I walked downstairs and I entered the room. And Tony Robbins was at the front of the room doing this intervention. And all I remember is I opened the door and I remember him saying, "Depression is the most selfish thing ever." Now, please, listeners, don't have me here say that there are some people who have clinical depression. It's different. But depression typically, and not for everyone, but typically, it's something you do, it's something you bring to yourself. It's something that you lower your chin, you lower your voice. You get into a depressed state, you bring it, you do it. But he just said depression is the most selfish thing you can do. And I remember I was looking for my group. I think our group was purple, and I was trying to find the purple bandanas, and I couldn't spot them. And so I just walk along the outside, and I'm looking for people to help me, and he just walks directly towards. You know how it is when you're at an event, when the speaker talks and you think he's talking to you. He was talking about my life. He's probably talking to everybody, of course. But he was just going on and laying, let's say, coals and heat and just putting more into the fire. And I'm going, "Brother, do you understand what my life looks like? And you're saying this about my life?" Finally find group purple, sit down, and all of a sudden the whole audience just erupts forward. And anybody who's gone to these events, it's a pretty safe environment for feeling emotions. Like people feel a lot over there, and it's a safe environment for it. So people cheering and then clapping and then crying and then clapping. It's just this expression. I'm going, man, I'm feeling it all. I'm feeling it all. And then he goes, "Okay, just stay standing and now look at your group members and do some work together." And I remember going, I'm not standing, because I was just sitting there going, I don't really feel like it. I don't know what I need to do. And I was just really reflecting what Meg had said and like, why am I here? I'm not even properly dressed. And all that I remember feeling is everybody started talking in the group, but I wasn't. They looked at me and said, "James, would you like to join us?" And I thought, here's my invitation to experience a deeper part of my inner world, the very thing that I said that I wished I had, that Meg had when she was being with the kids and doing with the kids. And I thought, no, I don't have the ability, so I just chose to sit. And in that moment, a song started playing, and it was just like it broke. The freaking shell of the ego just broke. And they say if the shell of the ego breaks once properly, it never has to do that again. And I got to my freaking feet and I joined, and it's like, you know what? They never gave me sympathy. I fit right in. And from that moment forward, my life has been like, honestly, I have an unshakable love with life. I love being here. Someday I'll die, but I love being here.
That's amazing. What a brilliant opportunity to awaken.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. You brought tears to my eyes right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brilliant opportunity that you were given, and it's nice that you had the universe whisper in your ear to get your ass out of bed.
Mm-hmm. True, 100%. That's grace, luck. Well, what did I do to
Yeah.
contribute to that? That was just grace.
I know that you spent The last decade designing your life of gratitude and being grateful. I'm assuming that it started from that point.
Yeah, that's where one chapter of my life closed and the next one opened. And let's just say I have felt way more tension, way more things have coalesced, come together at the exact same time as what eventually or what initially threw me into that dystopic mess. Remember, I said it was the audit, my son being born, high functioning autism, the market crashing, all kinds of things. And so, all that I can say is I just realized. So, the second chapter of my life, I now look at thresholds of life and I see them as gifts. Instead of when I'm being brought to a place of going, oh my goodness, there's so much pressure here. What do I do with it? Instead of saying that pressure I need to try to get rid of and get rid of and get rid of, I now utilize the pressure because pressure is what helps us be present. If we have pressure, we can either explode outward with that pressure or we can let it pressurize us from within. And actually, the human body, there's a term called tensegrity. And tensegrity is simply where if you just consider your skin as the shell of your being, and your skin allows for everything to stay in place. If you didn't have skin, it'd just plop out everywhere. And so your skin nicely holds within it and allows for things to stay inside in form. And so what the skin really does is it creates an atmosphere or a shell for pressure to exist. Now, what's interesting when you think about what's at the core of your being, it's your skeletal system. And consider this, listeners, your skeletal system is free floating inside your body, not poking through your skin or even up against so much, but it's free floating inside of a pressurized area that your skin is holding. So the good news in life is we all actually want pressure. Without pressure, there's nothing. So we can appoint pressure in our life to be the enemy and try to get rid of it, and then put ourselves into trying to talk our way out of things constantly, meaning never facing the reality of what life is. The consciousness observes life through the lens of am I winning or am I losing? This is just the primary personality, the entry level survival being. This is what it does. Do I get more or do I get less? That's reality. The only thing is, if we do dual living, where is it, am I winning or am I losing? I have to choose, is it good or is it bad? We're throwing yourself into a hellish existence. We're going to suffer if we do that. In the middle, and it's not to take the feel of the cry or the laugh away, but in the middle lies a gray area, which, by the way, funny little, you know how it is sometimes you choose names for your children. Harrison, high functioning autism, who helped throw me into to get finally to see myself in life and transition me from that way of living to now here. His second name is Gray. So it isn't black or white living. It isn't wins or loss, good or bad. Harrison Gray, Gray. The gray is the gain. You feel it all, meaning when you feel like I lost something, like Michael, when you felt like you lost, the reality is you lost something. Instead of trying to convert it into positive, you lost that. But when you lose something, what do you gain? Just like when you win something, what do you gain? Both have equal prize in your life. Both bring a rich, rich, rich nugget. And so we can choose to eliminate things in life or utilize. If we eliminate, then when pressure comes, we're going to try to distract ourselves, numb ourselves, become addicted to numbing. Who isn't addicted to numbing? Either pornography, either success, and there's nothing wrong with success, and there's nothing wrong with intimacy. But numbing through something through fantasy is you're not playing with the realness of life. When you really get okay with the reality of life, then all of a sudden you begin to realize there's no more need to fantasize, to wish it was different. You begin to only desire to be where you are, because where you are is reality. And reality provides enough pressure for you to be so present, for you to see both the hidden So the seen thing and the unseen thing. And who doesn't want to see more? What allows you to see more is when you hit that threshold moment, instead of exploding outward, you allow this pressure to go within, not for self blame and condemnation. I've been there, but to let it expand your shoulders in real time and watch yourself unfold. Who doesn't want to resurrect from an old life to a new life? Who doesn't want to ascend from an old way of being to a new way of being? Ascension happens once you've resurrected to something several times. Then all of a sudden you transform into another being. And the way that that all comes is when you are invited to experience. So listeners, if you think about your life, where are you? Not if, where are you in your current life facing something that is stress testing your ability to hold it? You feel like, oh, I don't know if I can hold it. Like James's story. Honey, it's back. Depression's back. You're like, oh, I don't want to hold this. Where do you feel that where you don't feel like you have capacity to hold it? Then ask yourself the question, what's the truth here? Have I ever held this before? And the answer is likely going to be no, because you've hit threshold in a new way. Then ask another question. Is it true that because I haven't held it before, that I don't have the capacity to hold it? And why not instead say, let's see? Instead of saying no, say, let's see. Let's see, as in, like, in that moment, recognize that your being wants to take you to a new place, to experience something new, to have you, instead of through fear projected outward and shatter people's lives out there and explode forward, you use that energy from within and you just let it pressurize. Think about when you're pressurizing. Why isn't it the good news? Like a diamond comes when it's pressurized from all sides. That's the good news. And instead of desiring to, like, again, go out there and fragment and shrapnel everywhere, let it serve you to, like, focus on what is it that I can do? What is it that I can do? What is it I can do? And of course, we're not messing with grace, because grace is something that it's undeserved favor. It comes in your life and it goes in your life. You can't increase the amount or decrease the amount. Grace is grace. We're talking about the distinct things that you have control over. Pressure provides you that space to really focus on, what can I do here? What can I be here? What can I maybe not say here? What can I just be, like, present with? What can I just feel and not be worried if I have a depressed moment? There's nothing wrong with having a depressed moment. But having a depressed couple of days, now we got issue. All emotions are safe. But that's something we have to experience in life. Because if we're still trying to eliminate emotions, we're going to be bumping into those emotions somewhere. And if we don't make that emotion safe in your own life, you will find it very hard to have a wide view and a wide experience of life.
Very profound, everything that you just said. And actually, my life reflects upon that as well. I can validate what you said, because it's interesting how our children sometimes have to open our eyes because we've closed them and we don't allow ourselves to see what's in front of us. Your son, my daughter, convinced me to make a choice and to reinvent myself and to give me the opportunity to say I can break out of this and break free of this, and that I do have the ability to take what I learned as a law enforcement officer, what was ingrained in me, that you never give up and that you always move forward and that you don't succumb and that you overcome, adapt and overcome. It allowed me to take that and recognize that I had that within me to move forward and to walk out of the wheelchair and to walk her down the aisle. At the same time, it also allowed me to reinvent my life and my purpose. And I share this with other people on this podcast as well. It allowed me to reinvent myself, that in a way that I would never have been able to do as a law enforcement officer. I contributed to society as a law enforcement officer, but I contribute to the world from this podcast and this platform to speak to people like you who share wisdom and experience and life journeys that inspire people and motivate people and encourage them. And as you say, you bring a vibrant energy towards life, which you can see it. For those of you that are listening to the podcast, you need to watch this episode on YouTube as well. You can see it in your face when you talk about it. You get excited about it. You exude a positive aura around you that just lights it up. So what you preach is what you believe,
Mhm.
um, and you walk the walk. You don't just talk it, which is a very positive thing. Uh, what brought you to want to help other people move forward in that way into coaching and so forth?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it probably had something to do. You know, it's funny, right? I've been, interviewed on in many people's show, and great profound people, but you know how it is sometimes we're on a talk and the person asks a question and somebody else may have asked me that exact question, but the way that you're bringing this forward, I know prior to us hitting record here, you said you mentioned about unfolding. We get to unfold in life, and so one of the things that I always appreciate most is I get to experience what it looks like to unfold in a brand new way. And so here I have you, I have you sitting in front of me and you're asking me to unfold in a new way. And actually, what I just realized because of this preference, I forgot what you asked me. Could you ask me again?
I asked you what brought you forward to the point where you're at now, where you want to help other people bring that energy within themselves and recognize it, to be the coach that you are right now, because you coach people. So what brought you to this point? What
You
motivates you?
know, yeah, I would say the clear answer for that comes from a place of mm, deep deep connectedness to what's currently in front of each one of us. And what we do with that will shape our life. And so I had done my life where if I got through something, meaning if I overcame, and I'm thinking you're probably not talking about overcoming through conquering in a way that doesn't integrate. You're talking about a way, and I would have to align with that. So my answer is learning to utilize, and I know it sounds like a broken record, but learn to utilize life. And when life happens, that we don't be like, I've read these books, I've gone to these seminars, whatever, and I broke through in spite of these things. And I know it's just a play on words, and I don't want to split hairs here, but I do this because I want human beings to realize when you listen to your story, Michael, when you listen to mine, all of this happens because of our last life or because of the life we've experienced. And we can say in spite of, but the only thing is when we say in spite of, what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for the next time something happens that's difficult, we're going to end up resisting for a while and then finally breaking free again. And honestly, I wasted 2 years of my life. Nobody has to waste life by trying to resist. Let the good news be that we get to wrap ourselves around nature and not the other way around. Nature doesn't say, it doesn't respect the other way around. Nature says, I am nature, and you're going to live the most gracious, loving life if you find a way of wrapping around what I currently give you and saying, I want what I have, meaning I get to participate with what is here now. And so here's the thing, we're all constantly invited to participate with something. In that moment when I checked out of life, I just said, I choose not to participate with it. And there's that critical moment. And so my core passion is to take people with any any scenario they got going on and not turning what seems like a negative into a positive because it was never a bad thing to begin with, but being with a person, empathizing, and then connecting with that person through story and then future pacing it and framing it where they can see that actually all of life will be where do they have the ability to onboard both a win and a loss in a healthy way, because unless you do, you're never going to take courageous action to do new things because you realize the probability, the inevitability of a win and a loss, it's there. And so to clearly
Yeah.
be with people and be like, you have been given this. I wasn't given that. Your wife is lowering into the grave in a coffin now. That wasn't me. That happened to me maybe 5 years ago. But that's your story is different than me. And so you get this now. And so I'm with you here now, and we get to utilize this and participate with this. And let's stay in the moment. Let's stay with this. And let's let this be the news that it wants to be. Don't convert this into bad news. We have become so proficient at turning news into bad news. just all over the place.
I agree.
Instead, why not write?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's a I think, and I use myself and you as well. Sometimes we, in my position, and I can relate my journey in regard to that. This isn't my story, but with my journey in regard to that, to validate what you're saying, um, I was able to recognize finally, open my eyes and recognize that everything that I had experienced up until the time that my life changed in a very dramatic way, that everything and all those experiences that I had that I was missing, that I thought I had lost, I still had them within inside me.
Mm.
And that those inside me allowed me to transform my life into something that I'm doing now. It has brought me to
Beautiful.
where I'm at. And it allowed me to take what I had learned, the experiences, the conversations, the feelings, the anger, the resentment, the depression, and be able to have conversations with people like I do much more effectively and efficiently than if I was
Mhm.
not saying not, because I would have made a great police chief, but I wouldn't have been the same.
Mhm.
I've been able to reach people in a wider audience. I'm more relaxed. I spend more time with my family. I appreciate my kids more. I appreciate my wife more. You know, it is a journey, is a life journey, and it allows a pause to recognize that the experiences prior to me reaching this point in my life were part of my life in creating who I am today.
Mm. Mhm. You said that so eloquently. I
So,
love that. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I just said I just want to validate everything that you just brought forward. So,
Mhm.
I appreciate the fact that I know that you, and we'll talk about it here in a second. Excuse me. Let's talk about how people can find you. And I know that you have a podcast. So let's talk about briefly about the podcast as well, and how they can get to it. And I know that you have an offering that you would like to present to the listeners and the viewers.
Yeah, let me just, if you don't mind, I'll quickly tap into what you were just finished saying. How isn't it so liberating when we can bring purpose to our pain? We get to decide if we get if we're going to be about wasting life or utilizing life. And your story, what you just how you like you said the validation of, but there's evidence right there all over again, right? When you get to lean because of your story, not in spite of, because of, it's you get to bring purpose to your pain. So
That's
yeah, thank
profound.
you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. No, yeah, no, lovely. It's awesome. So yeah, people can there's currently there's a few different ways people connect with me. I do group events. So these are live keynote speaking events, retreats. But more specifically, and probably your listeners will be interested in one of two ways. I do one-on-one coaching, and I also have a virtual weekly wins and losses global call. So, firstly, the one-on-one coaching is a strategic platform, and what we do here is we look for results. And because we look for results that are individual to you, we go super deep. And those of you, by the way, who are feeling something now, who are deeply hungry for that ultimate personal, intimate, transformational experience, I challenge you to reach out to me. We can just have a little discussion because one-on-one coaching is just about you and I. And because of that, we get to go really deep. We get to get beneath the surface of your individual life experience, and we get to align with your strengths. And that's the key thing. So your strengths. And from that place of your strength, we get to sculpt and craft, and we get to design a personal success and fulfillment formula that is unique to you. Again, this is for those that are super hungry. And so let me say this, there's nothing wrong with success, but we have to mature our inner achiever forward. The second way people can get a hold of me is through the online offering. This is a gift for everyone. And one-on-one coaching won't be for everyone, but this is a gift for everyone. And so this is a virtual experience, and I just call it the virtual weekly wins and losses global call experience. Honestly, I don't know of a better way, and of course I'm a little biased, but I don't know of a better way to bring raw truth to what your last week is really all about. And this is a no charge call, and it happens every Friday at noon. And jumping onto this call will deliver for you just this really interesting experience, as you'll be able to clear the deck of all the unhelpful stings of last week's losses, so that when your new week begins, you're best able to launch out of that gate invigorated and ready to take bold, courageous action, that forward action that you want, but without the unhelpful side of hesitation and delay. So I invite each one of you to show up and share as you wish, or you simply observe others share a personal win and personal loss that stood out for them from the past week. I invite you to come, master the art of being prepared for anything, win, lose, or draw. Come and learn how to authentically celebrate both a win and a loss in real time, every time. So for live events, keynote speaking, group one-on-one coaching, you can reach out to me as what's shown here on my website, www.jamesheppner.com. And the spelling is JAMESHEPPNER.com. And for the no charge weekly wins and losses call, and that happens every Friday at noon, simply go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com. And so spell it the way that it sounds. And that's weekly, WeeklyWinsandLosses.com. So weeklywinsandlosses.com.
Outstanding. And your podcast is available from the website as well and on most listening platforms, correct?
Correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's also entitled Wins and Losses.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'll make sure that all that's in the show notes, including the weekly call. I'll make sure those get added to the show notes so that everybody has an easy way to get in touch with you and to connect with you. James, thank you very much for joining me today on this conversation. I really had a good time. I really appreciate your wisdom and your experience.
Well, it was an absolute honor to pitch and catch with you, and to be honest, I unfold typically based on what's in front of me, and so who you are, my friend, is rich. I got to experience saying things in a few different ways, and I get to feel a few different things. I've had these feels before, of course, but I get to feel things in a new way. So you have a unique way of drawing, and again, this tenderness to the surface and just the realness of it all. So the one little thing that I just noticed is when I said the podcast is weekly or wins and losses, it's actually called Weekly Wins and Losses with James Heppner. So there's another person who has weekly or wins and losses. Mine's Weekly Wins and Losses with James Heppner. So there you go. Thank you so much, Michael. It was an absolute pleasure. I would do this anytime. And by the way, I'm going to invite you on my show. If you'd like, I'd be honored to host you.
I would love to be on there. I would. We'll make arrangements soon to get off of here. James, this is one more thing before you go. So one more thing before we go. Mm-hmm. Do you have any words of wisdom you can share?
Oh, my goodness. I would say there is, I'll leave it with a single line. What would happen, listeners, and this is part of my value set, if you decided that nothing traps you and everything frees you, what would happen to your life if you made that decision? Again, it was an honor to be here with you. We'll do it again sometime. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go, a unique conversation about life. If you like our show and want to know more, check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. That's beforeyougopodcast.com. Tell your story, share your expertise, contribute to the blog, and subscribe to the newsletter. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform. One More Thing Before You Go, a unique conversation about life podcast, is a creation of One More Thing Productions, established 2010, all rights reserved.